staying with us throughout the morning. We're in the last hour of Citizen Extra, and this hour we want to focus on the Jamhuri Day celebrations and the President's speech. In studio with me is Maurice Odwor. Right next to me, he's an investment manager, and next to him is Johnson Kidaka, who is a governance expert. And you're both welcome to the program this morning. Let's start by a quick recap for you. This is what President Kenyatta had to say to the nation yesterday.
The general will of all, no one, including myself, is above it. No matter who you are subject to its authority. Anything outside the Constitution is a hostile intrusion. Whoever destroys property, whoever chooses senseless violence over constitutional order, all these are enemies of the Republic, and that is how they will be treated. There will be a 5th, 6th, and even 10th president of Kenya, but there will not be a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th Kenya. Once again, I reach out to all Kenyans to help in achieving our common goal of peace, stability, and prosperity for all. That we all have a role to play, and we all must listen to one another. After all, a good idea must always give way to a better idea wherever it comes from. Many in our political arena have believed that politics matters more than economic development. We have drawn Kenyans into our squabbles. For 50 years, we have squabbled over politics for politics' sake and squandered economic opportunities that would have made a difference in the lives of our people.
Excerpts from the President's speech yesterday. Johnson, let me start with you. What do you think about his entire address first?
Thank you, Anne. I think I was impressed by the tone. It was very statemently, unlike what we listened to when the President was being inaugurated. This was a market quite different in terms of the tone. There's the head of state. He's actually setting up his agenda, and he's addressing the nation. And I think it's important for us to appreciate that in this speech, the President is also trying to lay the groundwork for his legacy. But he's also trying to invite us to start imagining Kenya. And this is something that I think we have lost, because for the longest time this year, we've been talking about politics. And we've not stepped back to imagine what is Kenya. And in the life of a nation, there comes a time when people start dreaming. You vision what is Kenya, what is it that you want Kenya to be. And I think the President is challenging us to start imagining Kenya afresh, so that can inspire us, that can motivate us, so that whatever we see and whatever we do going forward, the next 5 years or so, will be aimed at achieving and realizing that Kenya that we got to dream. So it's a good speech. I was impressed. The choice of the ones who were very specific. He talked about constitutionalism, that whatever we do, we should be able to do within the confinement of the Constitution, which I think is important, because I think we've seen both political formations operating outside the Constitution and justifying that. I think the President is saying, no, it's time for us to go back to the framework of the Constitution if we have to live together as a nation called Kenya. Secondly, his invitation to engage all parties, I think, is welcome. More so given the fact that we need to tone down the tempo of the politics. That is willing to engage with his adversaries, I think, is a welcome gesture. The form, the nature, the content of that engagement, I presume that we want to leave it to the political elite to agree. I think the bottom line from where me and sit is that we really would like to come down and start doing things that pay bills for you and me.
All right, Maurice.
For me, what I picked from the President's speech, it was a mature speech, especially given where we've come from. A lot of country now is so divided, and we are seeing President that now acting as as a symbol of national unity in terms of appealing to the both sides and saying that the next phase now will involve all of us. My reading of that is an invitation from all Kenyans, from whichever political divide you come from, that the next phase will join is the common denominator that we share, prosperity and economic activities for all Kenyans. I like also his reference to the constitutionalism, which is the one thing that we also need to observe. As much as you want to build we want to have economic development, it must be within the confines of the law. So basically, if you look at it, everything put together, I think this was a statemently speech. It was a mature speech. I'm seeing the president from the speech is acting as a symbol of national unity.
You think he's broken away now from politics and you know, many people refer to him very much as, you know, still being the Jubilee candidate and being seen as such even after, you know, being elected and confirmed. Do you feel that, you know, that breakaway is now happening to see the national figure?
I think it's a gradual process, Anne. It's not a one-off. Remember, the president is a creature of politics. He's created by politics. He got where he was through politics. And I think the president is trying, from where he sits, very much not to sound like a typical politician. Because a typical politician is very disagreeable, very confrontational, and extremely opinionated. It becomes very difficult to engage with a politician on a sober discourse. And I think what the president is trying to do is appealing even to his fellow politician to calm down and shift the debate to the next level. The next level really is that Jubilee, it is no longer a Jubilee government, it's actually a Kenya government. We don't have a Jubilee government.
It's not the government of Kenya.
It's the government of Kenya. It's not a Jubilee government, and that labeling does not help. The government of Kenya, which is headed by the president, must deliver for the 45 million people, irrespective of their political persuasions. And that, to be able to do that, we must be able to abandon our very strong position and views. I think what we are saying is that from day one, we talk about accountability. The president is promising us certain specific deliverables within the next 60 months. In fact, under 60 months. Because it's only 5 years. And we know our experience is that the last year of any electoral cycle is lost in politicking. So he has more or less 48 months to be able to do what he has promised us to do. That cannot be done if it's politics as usual. If we have a lot of contestations, if we have a lot of grandstanding. Because at the end of the day, we must be able to agree that if the government of President Kenyatta, which is going to execute the Jubilee agenda, delivers, then it is the Kenyan person who benefits. It's not the Jubilee person who benefits, right? So yes, I see an effort. My fear, Anne, is that I don't know whether what the president is seeing is going to be replicated by the rank and file. We want to hear the same tone, the same emphasis from the rest of the people who are in government, more so from Jubilee, because Jubilee people must be much more gracious than their adversaries. We would like to see them toning down deliberately, despite the provocation from the other people. Because invariably, when you lose, you know, there's a lot of grief. But I would like to actually see whether the president can now rein in his troops so that politics can be abandoned, or those grandstanding issues can be abandoned, so that essentially we can start uniting the country and we can start rallying the nation against or towards this envisioned Kenya that the president, you know, painted for us in his speech.
And that really is going to be the challenge, you know, with one eye on delivery and the other knowing full well that there must be people who already their calculations are the politics of 22, that this was just a necessary hurdle to get over in order to achieve a 22 endgame. And so I hear you in terms of, you know, really being able to rally his team and get them to talk the same talk while others may be playing for a, you know, with a larger game in mind. But be that as it may, there were criticisms of his inauguration speech. Some felt that, you know, he talked too much to the region and not enough to Kenyans. Do you feel this was more inward looking, that this was very much the speech to the Kenyan people and for Kenyan issues?
I think yesterday's speech was a local speech meant for Kenyans, and almost 90% reference were made to Kenyan issues, Kenyan's problems, Kenyan's prosperity, what we need to do going forward. And if you look at even what the president did, for me, I think the president now is out of the politics. President has no any other term beyond after 2022. I think he has found himself in with a very good opportunity. He's among the very few that have the control of the parliament that they can use to pass their policies. And again, we're not bothering about whether we'll people vote me in the next term. I think what the president now needs to do is to work for the Kenyans. I like how he appeared yesterday. Yesterday appeared, you could even tell the difference of the speech from addressing Jubilee supporters now to addressing all Kenyans, which I think that's the most important thing that we need, because look at Kenya, the way we as an economy, we are one of the most blessed economies. Look at the way the thing that we were going through during electioneering period, the economy was still performing. Nairobi Exchange still reporting a performance of 30% per annum. So what the expect now need to do is now to move forward. And again, I like the 4 pillars that he brought in, which now means at least he's now trying to bring his Jubilee agenda to be brought together now for commonality for all Kenyans moving forward.
Yeah, and speaking of the economy, if we can, let's just listen to what he had to say about achieving the Big Four. All right, very shortly we should have that for you, but he was talking about, you know, his second-term promise and it being premised on the Big Four, it being food security, affordable housing, healthcare and manufacturing. Does that line up, do you think, with everyday Kenyans, you know, Big Four? Is that the Big Four for the ordinary people, do you think?
I think so, to a great extent. If the president can deliver on the Big Four, then he would have sorted out the common man. If you look at the issue of health, for instance, it's a big deal, because you and me who live in the urban areas, we spend significant resources to support our folks in the rural areas because the hospitals are not functioning or the nature of the illness is such that they need specialized treatment. If those facilities in the counties can be functional and they can do all the things that they need to do, then you can actually see the impact. The issue of food is also very embarrassing. When year in our people are starving and we have to appeal to the international community for food donations, it's not the right thing. For a nation which is 54 years old, I think we should have basically mastered the issue of food production. The issue of value addition, you know, that will essentially unlock the value of the farming community, because a lot of our produce is sold raw, our coffee, our tea, our cotton, just as we did during the colonial days. It's not changed. So the common man basically just avails the raw material and is processed somewhere in Britain and basically is re-exported back. If that can happen, Anne, I can tell you there will be an immediate transformation in the rural economies and the rural part of this particular country. You talked about housing, and you know, and my friend Morris is in that sector, and you'll be able to share with us the tribulation we have in terms of the people who require housing cannot afford it because they're very expensive. In terms of even accessing the mortgage. The president had very specific issues about mortgage access, which is affordable, because right now at 14% plus, I don't know exactly how much money you can borrow to be able to buy a decent home. If all those things are unlocked, even if he's able to deliver about 45–50% of that agenda, it will make a definite mark when he leaves, and that will be a lasting legacy. Because I don't expect him to actually deliver 100%. It's not possible to deliver 100%. But if he can deliver a substantial part of that agenda, I think he would have secured his legacy.
All right. Do you think that his Big Four, everyday Kenyans Big Four?
If you look at the Big Four, security, food security, housing, healthcare, manufacturing, I think all these 4 items touches on the local or common mwananchi, because manufacturing is all about to do with how do you unlock the potential, how do you create more jobs. Look at housing, how do you upgrade slum, how do you make sure that people have accessible to affordable and quality housing. Look at healthcare, how do you ensure that the access to health services are institutions are working properly within the county governments, even at all areas of the government. Food security, I agree with my colleague. At 54, we should not be talking about importing maize from another country. And again, given that Kenya as an economy, agriculture contributes 33% of our GDP. That's where the food should be coming from. So I think it's all about now to do with the mechanization of agriculture, automation of all our processes, ensuring that there's stores that we can use to store even these grains, and again ensuring that the county, the challenge that I usually see with the Kenyan, especially when it comes to these devolved services, is the county government. The county government also now need to wake up and come to realization that they were never meant to be an expenditure unit. They were meant to be avail services closer to Kenyans. Housing, again, we need now to ensure that now we are working with developers to couple both demand and supply. And the challenge that we have in housing that the common mwananchi cannot afford. So we need to unlock the financing capability. We need to also to empower the developers that at least they are able to deliver cheap housing to Kenyans. And also now SMEs financing, again, is still at the core of this. Remember, the main reason why the interest rate cap bill law was enacted is to ensure that Kenyans have access to cheap loan facilities, which it has not worked because we are seeing private sector credit growth growing at 2%. Now need to do to ensure that we unlock the potential of SMEs is, again, look at now what are the challenges that we're still facing with regards to access to loans that we can use now to continue, again, building other business to provide job opportunities for Kenyans.
All right, and I want us to go deal with the 4 one by one in detail, but let's just now listen to what the president had to say.
We'll create jobs which will enable our people to meet their basic needs. Jobs will transform the lives of our people from that of hardship and want to new lives of greater comfort and well-being. These boats must land their catches in Kenya. The work of cleaning and packing fish for export must be done in Kenya by Kenyans. Our tea, our coffee, our meat, fruits and vegetables will now have to be processed locally. This way, we will obtain more value for our produce and create more jobs and wealth for Kenyans.
Yeah, absolutely. And value add has been, you know, one of our biggest challenges, and we'll get to that in detail when we talk about manufacturing, if you like, and agro-processing, which is what a lot of people have been campaigning for. But I want us to start with food security, and you will, of course, remember that Jubilee had the pledge to put at least, it was 1 million hectares under irrigation, and that has faced its fair share of challenges. One of the major ones being the fact that we didn't have the requisite dams or infrastructure in place in order to have that sort of irrigation happen. So let's start with that. What will it take to make Kenya food secure, and in your own estimation, how much can be done in 5 years?
I think we need to go for what you call the low-hanging fruits. We do not need mega infrastructural problem to realize that dream. What we require is to make sure what we have already works. In this country from 1970s, we have very many micro-irrigation schemes in various parts of the country. We also have got mega dams, which are not functional. They have a lot of silt. So we need to desilt them so that essentially we can restore the volume of the water that is there. Because if we attempt to go for the mega infrastructural problem, like a 1 million acre irrigation scheme, we'll have a lot of headwinds in terms of procurement. There will be governance issues and all manner of issues. And we know for a fact that those huge mega infrastructure, they take time before they deliver. What I think and we should be able to do is to actually do a very careful and critical audit of the status quo as it is, and ask ourselves, have we been able to maximize on what we already have? So, for instance, we talk about farming, value addition. If you look at the coffee sector, if you look at the tea sector, if you look at the milk sector, we already have the basic infrastructure. The KTDA, Kenya Tea Development Authority, runs the tea industry. And it basically controls the bulk of the tea that is exported in this particular country. This tea is export and raw, what you call black tea. If, for instance, we are to go to upscale its operation, say, we want to package and brand that tea. The president yesterday talked about a tea factory in Murang'a called Kenya Nyaine. And in the Mount Kenya region, you have the best tea because of the volcanic soils. If these teas are now mandated and say, we want you to give us, in the next 6 months, to give us a blueprint of value addition, we want to be able to tell us that you are selling a complete product. You know, that will unlock the value and the resources that will basically be available to the farmers. So I think what we need to do, in my own opinion, is actually look at what is practical. Because the difficulty is that technocrats sometimes look at the mega issues, big infrastructure projects, you know, the 10 dams. That can still be done, but we should not delay the the delivery of the president's
food security.
Of food security on that.
So how do you do it? How do you do it without the dam? At least that was the explanation that was given by government in terms of how, you know, the slow start to this, that the dams need to be in place.
One of the things, and some of us who were there before, if you went to our traditional homestead, there was always a granary. And for the longest time, our mothers will make sure that there's sufficient food to last you for about 3 months before the next crop is harvested. Today, what we have is that the entire crop is delivered to the market, and the families are left with no food at all. There's something very interesting that President Museveni said once when he visited Kenya. The concept of food secure. He actually called it food secure. And we need to revisit those models that had worked. We need to encourage our people that even if you have got food or cash crop, that basically maize and beans and the rest of it, you need to put aside a certain amount of it so that at the end of the day, you're able to sustain yourself.
But isn't the issue also just how much food that we're just not growing enough to begin with?
Yeah, that's part of it. But part of it is basically the fact that the farmer has been abandoned. Remember, we have this issue of what does the county do and what does the national government do. The issue of the day-to-day, you know, the agricultural support systems, the extension services are domiciled with the counties. And there's a little bit of education that basically the county government agricultural officers need to engage. They need to engage the farmer out there. It's not enough for the president to talk about it at the national level. The farmer and the grassroots need to be engaged. The issue, for instance, of the seeds. We know for the longest time, if you go to the rural areas, there are some people still who use, you know, the crop that they harvested to go and plant. You know, we need a knowledge that in this particular location, these are the farmers who are doing maize, for instance, and they've been supplied with the right seeds, and they've been supplied with the right forage, they've been supplied with the right fertilizer. Those are issues that cannot happen by chance, because the farmer need to be empowered. Once you empower the farmer, the rest he can do, and you do it very successfully. He has done in the past. So my take is that I would not want to be tempted to go for the mega issues, the big budget projects, because that I can tell you for a fact will get stuck even before we have started. We need to first of all ask ourselves, what do we have right now? Look at the case, for instance, for the issue of rice in a county where I come from. The existing rice scheme was done in the 50s. Part of the reason why it is not able to give its output is because of the water management. The canals have been silted. There is no proper regulation of water in terms of that this block will be available and so forth. Those things can be done, and they don't need a lot of magic. We just need to make sure that basically we know what we are going to do. Then we need to ask ourselves, since we have already maximized the infrastructure that we already have, what can we do to add up to it so you complement?
Okay, so don't go for the mega projects. Okay, fine. That's a point. For you, what would it take for food security?
Looking at a number of things that you have to put in place. First of all, is storage facilities, because now in several instances that we heard about maize production in some parts of the Kenya that farmers don't even have to get the facility where they can store maize. That one we need to sort out. Number two, we need to
a proper drying facility.
Exactly. Number two, we need to look at, I remember not take at agriculture as the core component of the Kenyan GDP, which contributes 33%. And it reminds me sometimes back when I used to sue agricultural extension officers. Right. So we need to resuscitate those services. And again, now we need to look at the irrigation schemes. I'll divide them into two. I'll now look at the current existing irrigation scheme to ensure that at least I achieve the maximum they are capable of producing. Before now I move to what my colleague referred to as the mega irrigation schemes. Apart from that, the next that I look at the financing. How do we ensure that these farmers have access to financing facilities to ensure that they continue carrying out their activities? Then the final one is subsidy. We keep on talking about maize subsidy, seed subsidy, that again, the question, do these subsidies usually get to the benefit of the ultimate farmer who is supposed to ensure that there's continuous production of maize and food stuff in this country? So it's a good approach, but we need now to look at the main thing, we need to look at now, how have we been doing it and where did we go wrong before we tackle these other factors.
All right.
Maybe, and the other issue I think we need to look at is the average age of the Kenyan farmer. Is actually over 60. that is a very unproductive person. We will need to reconfigure that. We need to encourage more young people
to get
with energy into farming. So we must make sure that farming pays, so that we can have a critical mass of young persons who are now getting into agriculture as an investment, as a source of livelihood. Today, a typical farmer is a fellow who has never been to school. Most likely he's never had formal employment. That particular person has limitation in terms of uptake of technology, and also in terms of putting into practice agricultural innovations. So I'll be very interested to actually see what kind of blueprint that the government has to be able basically to reconfigure that space where the farmer is operating.
Okay, let's move on then to now manufacturing and processing. Okay, let's start with agro-processing, because that's where we went, and obviously that has been one of the major challenges that we have. Why do we need to send our produce abroad to buy it back in a refined format? What are the quick wins here for government?
I think the quick wins here is what I alluded to, the issue of branding. We do not need a lot of infrastructure to do that. We need just to sit down and basically give ourselves very specific timelines, maybe 6 months. We should be able to see what you call uniquely branded coffee from Kenya being sold in the international market. For coffee, we can do that almost right away, because these are basically our flagship agricultural produce that we export to the world. That can be done because already we have what you call the basic primary infrastructure in place. All that we need to do is basically say this is going to be where we're going to concentrate, so that we're able to do that. Because at the end of the day, if the farmer, for instance, what goes to the farmer is enhanced even by about 20–30%, it will make a whole huge difference. And that vision, that imagined Kenya that the president was trying to draw to us yesterday, will become a reality. Because unless the farmer, the common man, has got disposable income, then it's going to be very difficult. The government will then be the only source. This syndrome that the government should support us will basically continue. But if people have got their income, you'll find the pressure on the government basically will be lessened. But
we have seen, these small groups, you'll see like church groups, women's groups, who have tried to, take that extra step in terms of refining their product, especially if you're talking about, locally grown teas. They're trying to innovate, to come up with different blends and package, etc. But there is this entire youthful workforce that, left with degrees in things like marketing, etc. How do you get these two sectors of agriculture and perhaps, other arts and innovative new careers to blend for that final product of, that agro-processing should yield?
If you look at what you need to do, because currently if you look at youths are going to schools, graduating, getting degrees, they want white-collar jobs. Because agriculture as it is now is not that attractive. They can't even bother spending their time doing the farming, looking for agro-processing. What do you now need to do now to unlock the potential of agriculture as a sector in Kenya? For it to be more attractive, people to do business, for agriculture to be like one of the most paying sectors in Kenya, then you'll attract all these youth. The next that we need to look at all our key exports in terms of what is Kenya known for in terms of production. We have coffee, we have tea, pyrethrum, all flowers and all those. How can we ensure that these things are packaged in Kenya before they leave the Kenyan territory? So that now we don't export tea, going to another country, bring it back now at English tea, then tea that we just produce here in Kericho, just to ensure that everything we package it here in Kenya, and the Kenyan farmer need to be empowered for these goods to be competitive in the international market.
All right, let's just take a short break from that and catch up with more news as it happens. The Education Secretary, Fred Matiang'i, is launching Swahili books this morning. Let's listen in.
I walked into classrooms where I ask, in some cases I'm with the peers, in some cases I'm with the directors from the ministry, where I ask a question. I was in a school in Eastern Province, chemistry class, 46 students in the class. I asked them, how many of you have got the textbook? 2 textbooks, 2. Tell me, you are educators, how do you hope those children are going to pass? And yet there is a direct relationship between learning outcomes and access to instructional material. And in the case of Kenya, let me say this for the avoidance of doubt. We don't have a shortage of resources in the education sector. We have been given money. We've pumped in over 300 billion to the free primary education and free secondary education sector since the program started. By now, there is no good reason, or as President Kibaki would put it, there is no good earthly reason why we don't have a one-to-one ratio in our schools. And there is evidence. I can tell you this, my brothers and sisters. There is evidence. When you go to some of these national schools where principals have been faithfully buying books, they don't know what to do with the books. They have so many books. Many of these schools achieved the one-to-one ratio a long time ago. So I go to schools. If I go to school A and find that every student in that school has got a textbook, what is the explanation for a different situation in school B, other than corruption, theft, conniving, and collusion between those middlemen and the principals and so on who are involved? We will not put the lives of our children in the hands of quangles, profiteers, thieves, and all that. We are responsible people. As parents, God has given us children as gifts so that we raise them up. We cannot be given resources by the exchequer and then we now get somewhere in the middle and engage in conversations with people whom we want to impress and make happy at the expense of our children. We will deal directly with publishers. And publishers, you will never have dead stock. That is the good news. And your business is going to thrive. And now it's upon everybody to change their business model. But we have changed ours, our way of engagement as government. And we are not going back. I need to say this for the avoidance of doubt. If anyone thinks we are going to change this, please, this is your 2017 message. We are not going back. We want books in the hands of our children in school. That is how they are going to learn. That's how it will affect the learning outcomes. That's how we will know that learning is actually happening. So when the Form 1s report school on 9th of January, my good friends are working here, and I'm so happy. KLB, I love you with all my heart, because I am so happy to hear that you are saying there's no Christmas this time. Wakati wa kazi, my friend. Let's get some work done. Christmas to mandazi tutakula siku ingine. Let us get some work done. No Christmas. We make sure that we have the books ready for schools by the time the Form 1s are reporting on 9th of January. That is how countries are built. All those countries we admire, we keep talking about that are doing well in the North and Southeast Asia. They just didn't happen. People made sacrifices, and people demonstrated commitment and love for their country. They made sure that the resources they had went to the right direction. We in Kenya should be grateful and thankful to God. The resources we have should go to the right direction. Every shilling we are given in the Ministry of Education should go to the child, the Kenyan child. You know, we can't be adults who steal wealth from our children. You know, we're making money, we're taking it away from our children. That is not responsible behavior. So I am happy that you guys have suspended your Christmas. You know, in the education sector, we are used to sacrifices recently. I've been waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning to go to containers, to look at exams, and all around weekend and all that, making sure that everything goes right. Because somebody must make a sacrifice, my friends. It's not going to happen on its own. We must make a sacrifice. And everyone makes a sacrifice. Our president makes sacrifices, spends long hours looking after so much business for the country. So it's time for us also to make sacrifices. And KLB, I'm grateful that you have agreed to make the sacrifices that you must make. Lastly, I assure you, on behalf of my colleagues from the ministry, we will continue to support you. Whatever you need us to do, we will continue to support you. Yes, as Victor said, I heard the stories and other publishers were thinking, because we, as government, we own 2 publishers. We own KLB and we own Jomo Kenyatta Foundation. And everyone was asking us questions about accountability and competition and whether or not we are going to open this up. And we said we have no problem with competition because we know our capacity. We know what we are capable of. And we are ready to compete today, tomorrow, and any other time. Bring it on. And you see, we don't have a problem. We still do well. So, my good friends, this is the right stuff that we need to do for our country. I'm grateful that this is happening. I have seen some of the Form 1 books. I'm very excited. I have seen the thousands of the Form 1 textbooks that are ready. And my joy will be on 9th in the morning when every Form 1 child reports to school, they sign in and they get 6 textbooks of the core subjects each, and they go to class to study, so that we avoid situations like the ones we have seen in schools before with my brother Kipsang here, where we turn up and we find a teacher in class, he has got a copy and one student has a copy. And that's a school where we have been sending money to every year to buy books. So let us be good people. You teach, we will bring you the books. And that's a very good arrangement. Yeah, we'll bring the books to you, and then teach our children. You see, it's very easy. Because since it's looking like it's a problem for you to buy the books, let us take that burden from you. We know where to get the books. We know where KLB is, we know where Oxford is, we know where Moran is, where East African Educational Publishers, we know where these publishers are. We'll go there ourselves, get the books for you, bring them to school. Sasa nyinyi fundisha watoto. So that then our children, so that then our children don't have a situation where, like we've had before, they don't have books and so on, and we expect them to pass. How are they going to pass? Because I can talk about this until the cows come home. I'll talk about it another time. Education is supposed to be an equalizer. We're supposed to deal with some of the challenges we have of marginalization in our country through education. You know, good people, when you see people shooting their mouths around here about some of these policy things we are saying and criticizing them, parroting this, parroting the other one, they are not deep thinkers. They don't think very deeply about some of these things. Because each one of us who are seated here around the table here, we are here first of all by the grace of God, and secondly because we went to school. It's a fact. Someone gave us an opportunity. Why are we denying our children the opportunity? So if I have books in Alliance, I want books in a school in Kirinyaga, I want books in Mandera, I want books in Turkana, I want books in Lamu. Because that child who's going to Lamu Secondary School should have the same textbook the Form 1 student in Alliance has got in their hands. Then you are beginning to deal with marginalization. You can't have a situation where the national schools, because the principals there work hard, they buy the books. You go to Nairobi school, they have so many books, they have achieved a 1-to-1 ratio, but the Mpeketoni girls doesn't have books. So how do you hope that child from Mpeketoni will finally compete with the one from Kenya High? And yet we want to give them equal opportunities. The teachers who are teaching there were trained in the same class at Kenyatta University or in the same class at Moi University. The challenges now come in the facilities we have availed to them. These ones at Kenya High, we will give them all the books. The principal there maybe is responsible. The board is working on. Everyone is buying a book. You go there, the book pupil ratio is 1-to-1. In Mpeketoni is a different story. Or in some other school in Lamu is a different story. Or in Taita Taveta. So the best way to deal with this is make sure that the instructional materials get to all schools in an equal measure. The teachers were trained in the same place. We want to reduce this marginalization. And as I said when we were doing Form 1 selection, our new policy, and you'll see when the government rolls this out, our new focus on county and the sub-county schools is a game changer. Completely. Because in addition to the books available, we now start putting in resources to actually build the facilities that are not there. So that in our new infrastructure or grants, we go to the county schools and have the laboratories there. You know, so that there is a biology lab there, there's a chemistry lab there, same as there is a biology lab and chemistry lab at Mangu High School. That way, then you are beginning to move towards dealing with marginalization in the education sector. This is what we need to understand. We're not doing these things for fun. And when you see people shooting their mouths around, it's because they don't think deeply about these things. We have lived it this way for a long time. We have affected our children, and we want to continue doing it that way because status quo is good for us. What about our children? Status quo is good for you, but what about our children? Are you thinking about our children? Are you thinking about our parents? And then we ask parents every other time, oh, book harvest, bring us books. Book harvest everywhere. bring us books which you don't account for. We don't have a system of accountability. There is no standardization. You can as well receive all those books when they are brought during the book harvest, take them to the local bookshop and get money back. Then next year have another book harvest. We're placing burdens on parents and therefore making education expensive and inaccessible. So I want someone to face us as government with an argument, not with pettiness, with an argument, and say why what we are doing is not right. And you will see for yourselves. Slowly, in another year or 2 years, you will begin to see the evidence of this policy. You will begin to see the impact of it in the learning outcomes, in the performance of our children in schools, as it were. So, my brothers and sisters, we have an opportunity to serve our country, to serve our people, to raise our children responsibly. Let us do it. And let's not think about ourselves, what is comfortable for us. Let's think about our children. That's what matters. And I'm grateful that we're walking in that direction. We will continue to support you. And KLB, you are our champions. I am very proud of you. You are our champions in this matter. And let's drive that direction. Please remain focused. Let's get the work done for the sake of our children and for the sake of our country. God bless you. Now, we have an important assignment here. Hey, come along.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Waziri. Kwa sasa tuko tayari kuzindua kamusi ambazo tumejitayarisha nazo leo.
Okay, and there you have it. He used the opportunity also to talk about some negative feedback that there has been regarding the free textbooks, and basically, you know, saying that that's politics and not putting the pupils first. We return to the final moments of our show and just talking about the President's Big Four and how they can be achieved. We've talked a little bit about agro-processing and food security, but if we would then deal with the manufacturing sector, because we're absolutely the manufacturing industry, because we're out of time, what can we easily produce here at home that creates jobs, that you know, creates if you like more sub industries, if you like? What's a quick win?
I think what we need to do, because Kenya is an agricultural based country, we need to let each agricultural sector at least have an agro based industry that manufactures, that the agriculture acts as the source of the raw material for the company. This one will in turn create jobs, and you have to ensure that at least, remember the time we used to have Buy Kenya, Jenga Kenya initiative, right, so that we prefer Kenyan
Apparently
products.
We are still that time. It was just a policy of 2 years ago.
We need to ensure that at least Kenyan's products are competitive enough, once locally, by discouraging importation of things that we can produce internally, then again also international market, so that at least they produce, they export, we consume it, and then again in turn create jobs to Kenyans.
But each agricultural produce having, what did you call it? A processed product.
Exactly.
Okay, how is that achievable? How can we get there?
It's achievable, and because these are the outputs of the processing undertaking. But let me say, I think we need to link up all this talk with what is in existence. I'm a strong believer, and I'm looking at what is happening in Europe. If you look at all the industries, whether it's defense industry, agriculture industries, and service industries, and they're actually led by research. We must anchor research in what we are doing. And we have 31 public universities. And in this country, we have some of the best programs in agriculture. If you look at JUAT, University of Nairobi, they are actually centers of excellence in agricultural knowledge. We have professors, we have lecturers who have done extensive research, how you can upscale the agricultural process. We do not need any consultant from anywhere. These are our local scholars. They are there, ready and willing. They are paid from public coffer. They were on strike the other day, and they were paid. We need to actually mainstream them into this process. And this discourse will become more clearer, much more predictable, and we'll be able to start actually visualizing, dreaming about what is it that we want to do. Because there's extensive work that has been done on the issues the president is talking about yesterday.
All right, and I think plenty of people have talked about the need for, innovation also being the core of, if you like, a core ministry to drive all of this. So let's focus then quickly on affordable housing. I mean, we have seen projects start and stop for the longest time possible. In fact, when the Prime Minister was in office, I mean, that far back. What are we not getting right in terms of affordable housing?
I think what we need to do, remember at the times, more than 10 years ago, we used to have slum upgrading programs. I don't know what happened to that program, but I think that we now need to start to ensure that Kenyans at least get a decent housing. We need to work with developers, make it easy for a person to develop houses in Kenya. And again, we need to ensure that at least that sector remains competitive, remains vibrant. We couple demand and supply, so at least at the end of the day, the main thing again will in turn come to job creation, ensuring that the Kenyans are actually empowered and they have the capacity to afford this housing.
What do you do with developers? I mean, they're in it to make a buck. Do they need to be incentivized some way? Or?
They need to be incentivized to some extent, because, if you're in a country where everything rely on the government, that country will not work. You need to give them incentives. You need to give them, if you develop X number of housing, at least
low-cost housing,
you will get X in terms of, there's another one in terms of taxation, another one in terms of how you pay levies, all those things like those, that ensure that at least the sector remains vibrant and they have the motivation enough to focus on the low-cost housing. That's the main thing, because no one is focusing on low-cost housing.
All right. Finally, if you would, healthcare.
Healthcare is big. I think what the government need to do, and again we talk about quick wins, is to ensure that basically our county hospitals, our sub-county hospitals are working. At the very minimum, we should be able to have medication, and our health personnel should actually be available to treat our people. We don't need a lot, because the infrastructure that is there is sufficient. What we do not have basically maybe the equipments, and those can be upscaled. I think last year there was this upgrading and equipping level 5 hospitals in the counties with what you call the basic diagnostic machines. If that project is actually enhanced, then we'll be looking at hospitals that can treat a whole range of diseases, from lifestyle diseases to the other normal infections. If that is sustained, and we'll have an immediate impact on the capacity of our health service to deliver on its people, so that we'll be able to decongest Kenyatta National Hospital and other referral hospitals, such that if somebody out there in the county is unwell, he or she need not invest other resources to be able to come and be seen by a doctor in Nairobi. That to me is important. So I'm hoping that what we saw the whole of this year, last year, government doing in those county hospitals, that it will actually be enhanced. We need to actually now take it to the next level. I'm aware there's a neighboring, in fact 2 hospitals in neighboring counties where people from Nairobi actually go for treatment there, and not Kenyatta National Hospital. We would like to see this in our 47 counties, that those are hospitals that are working. These facilities. Because there's nothing as good as to preserve the dignity of a person who is unwell.
Right.
But when you go to our national hospitals, you really see our folks in very wanting circumstances. There are no hospitals, the facilities are not clean,
no beds.
I think we need to need to move from there. We need to move from there.
All right. And gentlemen, that's our time this morning. Johnson Kithaka, who is a governance expert, and Maurice Odor, an investment manager. I thank you both for your views and your time, and you for watching. That's our time on Citizen Extra. Stay with Citizen TV. Thanks for watching. I'm Anne Kiguta. Have a wonderful day.